The Battle of Marathon, 490 BCE, a small army saves democracy. Imagine standing on the plains of Marathon in ancient Greece. On one side, the vast Persian Empire, the most powerful force in the known world. On the other, a much smaller force of Athenian soldiers, fighting not just for survival, but for freedom. Against overwhelming odds, the Athenians won. Their disciplined hoplites smashed into the Persians and forced them back to their ships. This wasn't just a military victory, it was a cultural one. If Athens had fallen, democracy, philosophy, and Greek culture might have disappeared forever. Instead, they survived, blossomed, and shaped the foundations of Western civilization. And of course, from this battle, we also get the famous story of the messenger who ran roughly 26 miles to Athens to announce the victory, an inspiration for the modern marathon race. The Battle of Gaugamela, 331 BCE, Alexander the Great versus Persia. A few centuries later, another clash shook the ancient world. At Gaugamela, Alexander the Great faced Darius II of Persia. Alexander was outnumbered, his 47,000 men against Persia's 200,000 or more. On paper, it was impossible. But Alexander's genius lay in tactics. Using a combination of cavalry charges, phalanx formations, and clever fence, he broke through the Persian lines. Darius fled, and the once mighty Persian Empire crumbled. This battle didn't just give Alexander a crown, it changed the cultural map of the world. Greek ideas spread across Asia, blending with local traditions and creating the Hellenistic Age, a fusion of East and West that still influences us today. The Battle of Hastings, 1066 CE. The Normans conquer England. Fast forward to medieval Europe. In 1066, William the Conqueror and his Norman army invaded England. At Hastings, they faced King Harold and the Anglo-Saxons. The fight was brutal, lasting all day, with waves of Norman cavalry crashing against the English shield wall. The turning point came when Harold was killed, legend says by an arrow to the eye, and his army collapsed. The Normans triumphed, and with them came sweeping changes, a new ruling class, a new language, and a new culture. Modern English, with its mix of Germanic and French roots, is a direct result of that single day on the battlefield. The Battle of Agincourt, 1415 CE. Arrows versus knights. During the 100 Years' War, King Henry V of England led a sick, starving, and outnumbered force against French knights at Agincourt. Everyone expected the French to win. Instead, the muddy field and the deadly English longbow changed everything. Thousands of heavily armored knights were cut down by volleys of arrows. It was a stunning upset, proving that technology could defeat traditional cavalry. Agincourt became legendary not just for the victory, but for the way it reshaped medieval warfare forever. The fall of Constantinople, 1453 CE, the end of Rome. For over 1,000 years, Constantinople had been the jewel of the Byzantine Empire, the last remnant of Rome. But in 1453, the Ottoman Turks under Mehmed Aya brought it down. The secret weapon? Massive cannons that pounded the city's ancient walls until they crumbled. The fall of Constantinople marked the end of the Roman Empire and the beginning of Ottoman dominance. But its consequences went far beyond the city itself. That quest launched the age of exploration, sending Columbus across the Atlantic and Vasco da Gama around Africa, forever changing global history. The Battle of Saratoga, 1777 CE, America's turning point. Now we jump to the American Revolution. In 1777, colonial rebels faced British forces at Saratoga. The Americans, led by General Horatio Gates and Benedict Arnold, won a stunning victory. Why did this battle matter so much? Because it convinced France that the Americans had a real chance. France joined the war, bringing ships, soldiers, and money. Without Saratoga, the United States might never have won independence. With it, a new nation was born, and the global balance of power shifted forever. The Battle of Waterloo, 1815 CE, Napoleon's final defeat. By 1815, Napoleon Bonaparte had reshaped Europe through war and conquest. But at Waterloo, his ambitions came crashing down. Facing the Duke of Wellington's Allied forces and Prussian reinforcements under Blücher, Napoleon fought fiercely. But his army was exhausted, his tactics outdated, and the Allied coordination proved too strong. Napoleon was defeated, exiled, and never returned to power. Waterloo ended more than a battle, it ended an era. Europe was reshaped at the Congress of Vienna, ushering in nearly a century of relative stability. The Battle of Gettysburg, 1863 CE, turning point of the Civil War. In July 1863, the Union and Confederate armies clashed at Gettysburg in the bloodiest battle of the American Civil War. For 3 days, the hills and fields of Pennsylvania ran red. The climax came with Pickett's charge, when thousands of Confederate soldiers marched into devastating Union fire. The charge failed, Lee retreated, and Confederate hopes of invading the North were shattered. Gettysburg wasn't just a military victory, it was symbolic. Combined with Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, it transformed the war into a fight not just for Union, but for freedom and equality. The Battle of Stalingrad, 1942 to 1943 CE, the turning of World War II. World War II brought some of the most brutal battles in history, but none more so than Stalingrad. Hitler's army besieged the Soviet city, reducing it to rubble, but Soviet resistance was unbreakable. In freezing conditions, they encircled the German Sixth Army, cutting off supplies until the Germans surrendered. Over 2 million people were killed, wounded, or captured. Stalingrad broke the myth of German invincibility. From that moment on, the tide of war shifted, pushing the Nazis back toward Berlin. D-Day, the Battle of Normandy, 1944 CE. The dawn of the largest amphibious invasion in the annals of history occurred on June 6, 1944. Allied forces launched an assault on the beaches of Normandy, where they were met with barbed wire, machine guns, and bunkers that were defended. A great amount of money was at stake in this venture. If it had been unsuccessful, Nazi Germany could have been able to maintain control of Europe for a longer period of time. To everyone's surprise, however, the Allies were able to secure the beaches. Following their advance from that location, they moved inland, finally liberating France and arriving in Berlin. That day, known as D-Day, continues to be regarded as one of the most courageous and significant moments of the 20th century. It is a symbol of solidarity, sacrifice, and the struggle for freedom. The Battle of Midway, 1942 CE, America strikes back. At Midway, the United States Navy faced off against the Japanese fleet just 6 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor. However, American codebreakers provided the United States an advantage because they were aware of Japan's strategy. The Japanese had a greater number of ships and planes. American pilots were responsible for sinking 4 Japanese aircraft carriers in a single day, which was a shocking turnaround of events. In addition to causing Japan's navy to become decimated, the conflict also changed the balance of power in the Pacific. From that point forward, Japan adopted a defensive stance, clearing the way for the Allied forces to emerge victorious. The Battle of Dien Bien Phu, 1954 CE, the end of colonialism. We are going to be fighting our final war in Southeast Asia. In the year 1954, Vietnamese forces led by General Vo Nguyen Giap successfully encircled and triumphed over the French forces stationed at Dien Bien Phu. The French colonial rule in Indochina came to an end as a result of this tragedy, which was more than just a military defeat. At the same time that it dragged the United States deeper into Vietnam, the conflict inspired anti-colonial movements all across the world.